So like first question, like we're at this like Web3 house. I'm always like running into people who are like, what does Ryan Hoover think about Web3? And like we've hung out and like I know we've talked about NFTs and stuff, but I actually don't know what you think about Web3. So like give us like the nuanced. What does Ryan think about this whole thing going on?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's so I've always loved new technology shifts, consumer behavior shifts. Like that's a lot of what we're trying to find in the investing side is like what's changed, what's like the big opening. And when I moved to San Francisco in 2010, I joined a gaming company right as mobile gaming was taking off. And so we had this huge boom of new games, and of course mobile apps and things like that. All this innovation happening on the mobile phone, and that was really cool and exciting. And now there's many different shifts that are happening, and there always are, but Web3 is certainly one of them. In terms of my take on it, it's something I am excited about, and I'm long-term bullish that there will be opportunities. I'm also cognizant that there's a lot of failures along the way. And that's like with anything. We're going to see that in AI, certainly, of course, with all the boom that's happening now today. What I'm most excited about with Web3 in general is the opportunity to align incentives across, creators, companies, fans, users. And I think a lot about my experience at Product Hunt. Like, if Product Hunt was built today, I'm not saying it would be built on Web3 Rails, but the thought of what it could look like, building a community that is built on Web3 Rails, where there is an incentive system and a reward system and an alignment between us, the company, and the community is really, really compelling. And so I think there's gonna be a lot of really cool things. Right now, we invest in a number of different companies in Web3. I'm a personal investor in Web3, Thirdweb, yeah, and then a bunch of like infrastructure companies like MoonPay and like Layer 2, and also some consumer companies like SoundXYZ. And so we made maybe 8-9 investments in crypto in general. But yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit less eager to jump into maybe more of the experimental consumer stuff right now in this market, especially when it's super unproven on the market side, like the market demand side. But I think there's a lot of really cool stuff happening.
All right, that's interesting. I'm curious. We were talking like you had a first fund, right? You're on a second fund right now. Third fund.
Yeah.
Like what are like the new themes that technology changes over time? Like the first fund and the second fund, you saw different categories emerging that like entrepreneurs were excited about. Everyone on tech Twitter was geeking out about. What are the themes that are totally unique to this fund that you're seeing, that you're getting a look at?
Yeah, I mean we're generalist investors, so we're I talk to a lot of people who want to start funds and they're like, hey, what's your advice? And one of my biggest pieces of advice is have a focus and be a brand known for something and go super deep into it. And then we don't take our own advice and we go really broad. And it makes sense for us because we have a wider network, we get exposed to so many new ideas. And we do get excited about certain categories, even though we invest broadly. So from the very beginning, like an example of a theme that we're really excited about is distributed work, remote work. And so part of that was driven by Product Hunt being a distributed team across, I don't know how many countries now, maybe 10 or so. I've seen the pros and cons of building a distributed team. And one of our early investments was Deal, which is been fantastic. It's basically a remote distributed work payroll and HR solution now today. And that's one example of like a theme that we're excited about because I have personal experience and we had a belief, this is pre-COVID, that distributed work would be more common in the future. Today, I mean, there's certain other themes that we've been excited about, like voice tech is still interesting to us. I would have thought there'd be more interesting audio or voice tech companies like
what
today.
happened? What happened to Alexa?
I know. Didn't they divest a lot of their investment, Amazon in Alexa, if I'm not mistaken? I could be wrong in that. Did they cut the whole thing? No. So we do have an investment in VoiceFlow, which is doing fantastic. But when you look at like just the landscape of voice, I would have thought there'd be more multi-billion or at least billion-dollar companies kind of in that category. And there aren't as many as I thought, coming from like a 2019, 2018 perspective. And I think maybe part of it is, I haven't actually fully thought through this in terms of why.
Half-baked thought, yeah.
Yeah, half-baked thought on the cuff. I think some of it is just, the mobile phone is still what people are used to and what they have access to, and shifting behaviors to an audio-based experience is not only a behavior shift, but also transactions, for example, like Amazon did a lot of like, oh, purchase toilet paper, or like Alexa, give me some toilet paper. Like that's a weird thing, and even the most early adopters, I think, are probably, that's not like a normal, like I still want to use my phone, I still want to see it. It's like too weird, I think. It asks too much of consumers to shift their behavior. And so most audio experiences are the basic stuff, like play me music, you know, maybe read me cooking recipes, what time is it, what's the weather. Like that's how I use my Google Home. And so I think there's just been few opportunities to like insert yourself into the life or the workflows of most consumers in that space. Today, of course, there's like AI stuff is all the rage, and for good reason. Like if you look on Product Hunt, I haven't done the math or like counted, but it's probably like 30% maybe every day are AI powered products in some capacity. So maybe it's OpenAI in the back end or something, or it's maybe some more proprietary kind of AI powered infrastructure. But there's a lot of experimentation, and at the same time, I'm kind of, as an investor, I'm kind of cautious to invest in the space just because it's, you know, I saw a demo, I won't mention the name of the company, but in the music category, and the demo was incredible. It was like, give me jazzy chainsaw, 2 seconds, a chainsaw that sounds like jazz was playing, or take this song but make it more funky, and like take a song we all know but make it funky, and it's like, I don't know, anything, you name it, and now it's more funky. And it was incredible, and it's like definitely where like the future of music creation is going in that direction. However, the hard part with those investments is just like they just built it, and what's the defensibility when they're using open source code, and there's so much competition coming in. So I don't know, it's tough as an investor to place a bet unless you have high conviction in the team and of course like a path towards like a big market opportunity.
We were talking earlier about how like tech Twitter seems to be just a bunch of screenshots of like, look what I typed into this chat, and read this wall of text from GPT, like it'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
It's blowing all of our minds, and like you've seen it on Product Hunt, you're talking to companies. Are you, like, I see the AI chat, I see Mid-Journey pictures and like art, and like I bought the 200 profile pictures off Lensa to see what I look like as a cartoon. And do you see things that have like unlocked, like they inspire you to be like, oh, I had no idea that AI would be used for that, and like you kind of got your brain going? Like what's inspiring new thinking about AI applications?
Yeah, I mean the obvious stuff is, okay, what workflows do we have today that we can make 100 times faster? So things like legal documentation. Like there's a company that I spoke with is exploring like how do you apply AI to reading like long-term sheets and like, you know, creating legal documentation in general. And then of course there's like customer support driven AI. Like why do we need a human to be answering all these questions? Why don't we just like use AI to do that in an automated fashion? So there's a lot of like obvious things, which I think there will be winners there, or it will be the incumbents that use that technology to then, you know, improve their existing services and tools and their existing user base. And then there's the things that are like less obvious. And so yesterday someone, I didn't look into this deeply, but I just like jumped onto Twitch and someone created an AI generated Seinfeld cartoon. Maybe do you see that?
No, but like, oh my God.
It was 24/7 live streaming Seinfeld, and it was like a cartoon kind of like pixelated video, but they were speaking like in robot voices, in like pretty terrible jokes, but like every now and then you're like, it's kind of funny because it's like so terrible. And it was just live streaming, like 24/7. You can go there probably right now and watch it. And that is not something I'd invest in per se, but it's a good sign of like where entertainment is going and what weird things we're going to see in entertainment. And along those lines, Mario from The Generalist, he wrote about this 2 or 3 months ago, and he's talking about like endless entertainment. And if you think about like entertainment today, it's a book, it's a movie, it's a game. People take all this time, they you know, create the thing, and then you consume it, whether it's watching it or reading it, and then you have to wait. If it's like Harry Potter, you gotta wait for the next book or whatever. If it's, you know, some Marvel movie, you gotta wait for the next movie. And it's kind of compelling to think like, well, if this could be infinitely generated for free by AI and technology, like maybe you could actually get the next Harry Potter book now, and the book actually doesn't have it in it. It just keeps going. And if you apply it to actually books, it's also interesting to think about like fan fiction as like a comp for that. Like you sort of take all that information and you could generate fan fiction, you know, in the Harry Potter universe theoretically. And my belief in technology is that if you can imagine it, and if it doesn't break the laws of physics, at least as well, if we know what physics, like actually what those laws are, truthfully, if it doesn't break the laws of physics and you can imagine it, will happen eventually, is kind of my thinking. So,
quote unquote, Ryan Hoover said that.
yeah, and
like
I'll be dead before a lot of the things that we imagine, come to life. So I'll never be proven wrong. But anyway, entertainment is interesting. And I used to work in the gaming industry too, where it's like, I think
we were both in it at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, but well, I don't know if I can say it, but like anyway,
say it.
Related, Founders Inc. backs a game in
Scenario GG.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So, like
I don't know if
they're public. Yeah.
Okay.
But explain.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's really cool. It's like, okay, today if you want to create game assets, you have to create the concept art, and then you have someone create it, and like the game asset itself, and they go through back and forth and put it in the game and all these things. Basically, instead they created models and creating models that are in a specific type of aesthetic. So if you're building some medieval game, you don't want to just say, get me a chest and have like a cartoon chest, a medieval chest over here, and like some other like style. You need to be consistent. So anyway, long story short, they made it possible for you to create game assets, initially 2D, but I'm sure longer term 3D game assets like instantly. So you can take that time to creation like from thousands of hours theoretically to like days or less.
When I was in the game industry, the most depressed people I ever met were game designers who basically like drew bushes all day, and like they were so good at digital art, and they were like working on Farmville, working on new sheep, like gotta make sheep 10,000, but like this just spits out infinite numbers of variations of like, it's very cool.
There's like a meme right now too that's it's like people use different languages to describe it, like rise of the idea guy or whatever, it used to be the idea guy. I was like, oh, this idea guy's got an idea for a thing, but you can't build it, like who are you? It's like,
it's gonna be our time.
It's our time. It's like, in some ways, if you have an idea, now it's like, computers can now bring it to life.
Oh yeah.
It's really compelling. It actually creates a premium on good ideas, in some sense.
Watch out, builders. Okay, so changing pace, direction, or whatever. So we were talking about how like the builder culture, like there was this like era, maybe it was like 6 or 7 years, where people were like vlogging their thoughts on like how to start up, and like Paul Graham would be like, here's an essay on like schlep work, and like it would all blow our minds, and it felt like a new kind of business school, if you will, kind of out there. And then Product Hunt comes along, and we have like this whole community vibe, and you had thousands of meetups going, and people were posting what they were building on nights and weekends. And here we are like years later. Like there's sort of like this shift in what is the builder community, what does it feel like, what's the intensity of it, who's in it. It'd be interesting to hear you just reflect on where we are today. How does it feel different? How has it changed?
I think it's when I think about builder culture, there's different ways to describe it. Like to me, it's like some people who just create. It's like fundamentally like they get off localhost, they put it out in the wild, they create things, and some of those are really silly things like the Seinfeld thing, which may not go anywhere, or it might lead to like something really compelling, something that's actually like commercially viable. And I feel like it's. I mean, we've just gotten so much more mature in the sense that there's so many resources online now compared to like a decade plus ago when it comes to how to build things. The tools have also gotten dramatically easier. Like whether it's, you don't have to be an engineer to build like a product, a functional product that's like theoretically very useful and like something you could charge for. And so it's like a combination of there are more people, there's better education, there are better tools, and therefore there's more things being built. I have no data to support that or back that up, but it's a vibe. It's a vibe. It feels like there's more and more things being built, and that was the thesis of Product Hunt. That like it's going to be easier to build things. There'll be more people building them, so we'll need better curation, and more people need help getting discovered. And so yeah, it's more mature in that sense. It's kind of also like a normal thing more so than like. I think the Social Network, the movie, I've said this before, was also a big inspiration for a lot of people. Frankly, like I think people underestimate that. It was a mainstream giant movie showing a story of like Mark Zuckerberg building Facebook, and that wasn't like there weren't many stories like that being told in technology. And yeah, maybe it wasn't like 100% accurate and perfect or like representative of what it's really like to build a company, but I think it did inspire people and give people like a taste of like, oh, that's entrepreneurship in technology. And so I don't know, it's global. People are online. It feels more connected online than it. Even more so than it was before, where it felt more centralized in Silicon Valley. I don't know. What do you think actually? You were in SF like during that boom.
I felt like I was in SF for like 10 years, and I actually I worked in tech, and I actually didn't feel like I was in the tech community at many times. Like I was a BD guy or going to market, and I and then suddenly now I'm in lots of group chats and things like that, and I feel like there's tech Twitter, and I do feel like, you know, that's an interesting point about the social network. I didn't think about that, but like either you were into TechCrunch and like VC, you know, famous VC blogger culture, or you're not. And if you weren't, then like how would you know the cool story of how to make a company? So yeah, I agree with that. I've got one. I got a couple more, but like raise your hands if you have a question. I'll start calling on people. Just FYI, just raise your hand if you. All right, cool. Let's go with you.
Hey, so
And speak up.
yeah, I'm curious to know. So you went from builder to investor. How's that transition been, and like, what are some surprises that you've learned along that transition?
Yeah, it's very different. So like in some ways, like we're building, you know, a venture firm. When I say we, it's a super small team by design. So it's very different in that sense. The biggest difference is your highs are never as high, your lows are never as low. And what I mean by that is, you know, when we have success, and our success is basically the success of our portfolio, it never feels like, yeah, maybe we helped, but like, it's not like we did it. Like I can't take credit for it. So it's never like, oh yeah, we conquered this mountain together, like you feel when you like build a product and people love it or something like that. But the reverse is also true. I don't have like, you know, Google Analytics, you know, to give me stress every single morning when things aren't working, and you know, I don't have like red numbers every day that's like super reactive to what's going on in my life. So it's a lot less stressful. I'm trying to scratch more of the building itch inside of Weekend Fund. We're doing some things around content. We're building a product that we haven't shared yet that's related to like investing and kind of our world now on the venture side. And then the cool thing is I get to, of course, talk to founders every day, building really cool technologies and products and ideas. So yeah, it's just very different. My ideal world is doing both, to be honest. Like when I was building product and investing in Weekend Fund at the same time, it was really stressful, frankly, but also really fun because I got to scratch kind of both itches, I suppose, at the same time.
I was asking you earlier. We have a bunch of people here who are at like the proof of concept stage. Some people even like want to be a startup after Hack Week. You talk to a full spectrum of companies that you take seriously and that you completely ignore. Because like, you know, who did I just talk to? What was that? What's like the sweet spot of like, okay, I'm listening. That's interesting. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're building AI Seinfeld, talk to me, no, just kidding. I mean, I think a lot of it is actually based on like, what is the insight this founder has into like some technology shift or consumer behavior shift? Like what's the secret that they've learned? And then I like to also understand like the path towards it, like what's the idea maze and how do they get to where they are? So my favorite is like when I walk away from a call and I'm like, I just, like there's 5 big insights where I was like, oh, I had no idea that was true. And I basically learn a bunch from those conversations, which should be the case every time, because like I'm not the one building in that particular space usually, and so like they should know infinitely more than I do. So that's a lot of it. I think when it comes to like someone going from a hackathon into like, you know, a startup and like wanting to raise, my biggest concerns, frankly, actually just in general is this is actually going back to what we said before, like a lot of the education and like how to build a company, how to raise money is now more mature, more accessible, and now people think it's like that's the default path, like to raise venture. And I think it's a major trap for a lot of people. Some people do it too quickly, and maybe that's a champagne problem if you can raise money. But you know, also when you raise money, you can't give it back. It's like a prison. It's not like a 9 to 5 where you can quit and give your 2 weeks notice. So I think one of the risks, especially if you like met your future co-founder at a hackathon, you know, in a week, build something that can be successful. But like, do you really know them, or are they going to move with you for? Are you the right people to build this together? Are you going to want to work on this for a decade? I would just be very cautious about raising. Frankly, I'd try not to raise as much as you can until you 100% know you need the money and there's a big market opportunity for what you're building and you have no other options. So I try to talk people out of raising money sometimes, which is like counters my business, I suppose.
Crazy. You.
Yeah, so I'm Alex. I'm building Coinbase for countries so people can get passports, citizenship, residencies. And something I'm really looking into is community, because I think it's really important for us to have this community of people that can, you know, go to government so we can integrate with government APIs and stuff like that. And I wanted to ask you, like, how do you see the gap between solving a problem and building a community? Because that's something we are struggling with, because we are solving a problem for some people, that maybe those are not interested in joining a community, and maybe some of them are just interested in the community part. And I know, for example, you with Product Hunt, first you built a newsletter and you solve the problem of discovering products, but at the same time you also build the community. So what are your tips on that?
Yeah, community can be great. Like, I mean, you've done a lot of community work over the years in different products. You've been working on it for like the Monkey Inferno crew, and I mean, don't force it is one thing. So some people think like, oh, community, that's what you're supposed to do now, right? And sometimes it just isn't natural. Like it doesn't serve a business purpose, or maybe your users, it just doesn't naturally make sense. In other cases, it can be like wildly helpful. So there are B2B companies like, let's take Salesforce just as an example. Like there's an element of community to them. Dreamforce is one of the biggest conferences that they host, and we don't think about Salesforce as like a community, and a lot of people maybe want to actually disassociate themselves from Salesforce, but they actually have been successful in building a community for something that maybe doesn't seem like something that should be a community. So I don't know, it's kind of it's like more, almost it's a very contextual question to like, they'd have to dive into to really understand like, does it make sense to invest in community? Another thing I'll mention too is sometimes community isn't about building a home, like bringing people to you, but it's about going to where they are and being part of existing communities. So if you're targeting, let's say product designers, let's say, instead of trying to build like a forum or some sort of space for product designers, maybe you go to where the product designers are already hanging out. What events are they going to? What forums do they participate in? How do you be a part of those communities instead of like trying to pull people away?
That's a good question. Hey, what's going on? You?
I think you call Miami home now?
Call what?
Miami home?
I do, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome to Miami.
Yeah, thanks.
Being in San Francisco, now in Miami, being in the space for 20 years, what do you think Miami, I think we have a 5-year bull run at Miami. What are the good points, bad points? What are some things that people in the community can like take advantage and change the world, save the world, being in Miami? You see both sides, from Silicon Valley education to what do we have, what we can do to put more people in here?
Yeah, so I'm an introvert. I don't go to, I don't think I've gone to a single, no, I take that back. I've gone to a couple of Miami tech events. So I feel like I'm not super plugged into the local Miami scene. And for context, I moved here about 18 months ago from LA, and before that I was San Francisco. And I tend to live online, and so in some ways I don't think I have as good of a pulse on like the local Miami scene in terms of what people are saying or excited about. I do think that Miami's missing like a shelling point for tech builders and creators, and I'm sure there are spaces out there, but I don't have a space that I know of that I want to go and hang out and build in today. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's missing when coming from San Francisco, where granted San Francisco is very dense, everyone is in tech, so it's impossible not to run into tech people. But SF, it was just a lot more serendipity. It was a lot easier to kind of fall into and meet other builders, other creators. So I feel like that's missing. But again, I'll caveat that with like I just haven't put myself out there all that much.
Maybe we'll have to open a space together. I don't know.
I know.
Potentially.
We're
looking at spaces.
Yeah, we're looking at spaces.
And then is SF back? Is SF back?
Yeah.
Should founders even care about this question? We were like again, like, should I be in LA? Should I be in New York, Miami? Where should I be?
Yeah.
Lisbon has no taxes. Like, does location matter?
It's yes and no. So no, in the sense that like, Silicon Valley is on the internet now in terms of like, you can get access to kind of anyone if you use the internet and participate in communities and add value online. That said, if I was a 21-year-old wanted to build a network in technology, I would say go to San Francisco. I moved there when I was 22, and it's still going to be the highest density of people who are building in tech and people who are like on the forefront of technology in many ways, and that will just create a lot of serendipity, and you'll meet a lot of great people. So now I'm 36. Wow. Oh my God. I'm starting to be that old grandpa now, I feel like, in tech.
You mentioned Adam and I made Seinfeld jokes at our all hands meeting, and like literally no one even knew what Seinfeld was.
Yeah. I've actually never seen like a full episode, only bits and pieces. But yeah, I mean, so now I'm 36 now, and I wouldn't go back to San Francisco because I think it's sort of like college. So San Francisco to me is like college. You go there, you build an awesome network, you learn a lot, and I would benefit from being in San Francisco today, even at 36, of course, but the ROI isn't as high, I suppose. It's sort of like, okay, now I know people and having more of a network, and And so going back to the Miami thing, actually, like Miami, I think just needs more of that serendipity to create, I think, more opportunities in person. But again, if you're just online, if you're very online in a productive way, I think you can also benefit a lot from just being plugged in that way.
Do a couple more questions. Let's go.
Just quick on the Miami thing. So, like, have you been to places like Freehold? And I'm just curious, like, what might be good places to bring that serendipity? Like, I know there's a few co-working spaces as well, and in Wynwood. I don't know if something like that is kind of what you mean. So I'm just curious.
You know, you might have actually a better like roster of ideas than I do. I've seen like the Freehold like meetups, and I'm in the Miami Tech like Telegram with like I don't know how many people, 800, 900 people. I guess I'm just like so introverted where maybe I should be going to these events, but I get exhausted, and so I'm like, do I really want to do this? So I don't know. I think actually, I will say there are events. I should probably caveat what I said before. There are events that you can go to in Miami if you want to do those things. It just feels like there aren't as many of them, and it's not as dense or as easy to access as like San Francisco, where literally you just walk out of your office and like 3 blocks that way there's an event on a Wednesday night. So.
And just one last thing. What attracted you to come to Miami over some other places?
Yeah, so we had, so I think we were part of, I don't know, depends how you define it, this second new wave of kind of tech people coming. So it was what, March 2021, is that right? Yeah, March 2021 we visited, and then a bunch of friends were moving, and we're like, hey, let's look at some places to rent, and we just pulled the trigger, and 2 months later we moved. And you came for a conference.
Yeah.
You kept like pushing it back, right?
I didn't even know what Miami was.
Yeah.
But,
where am I? What is this?
I'd never been here. I spoke at a conference and like went out to dinner. There were fire dancers, and I was like, I got invited to go play beach volleyball, and I was like, I just like a whole bunch of things happened to me that had never happened in San Francisco. And like Brian said though, like the college thing is true. Like I felt like I went to college in when you in SF, you're at a coffee shop, you hear people talking about APIs around you. You see billboards for it is so obviously different there. But then you meet these people, and you're like, all right, I'm ready for like a lifestyle change. The beach, the sun, look at all these trees.
Yeah, it's just a nice change. I had a bunch of friends here. Also, it's like it's not permanent, so it's like we can always move. I'm not afraid to admit taxes are a thing too. It's like it costs a lot of money to live in California or New York or some of these states. And then I live online again, so like my team has always been distributed. So as long as I have internet, it's easy, to work.
Ben had a question.
Yeah, I have a product hunt question.
Yeah.
Have you guys thought about switching to like video style for like demo discovery or anything like that?
Like having like demo launch, like video kind of demo launches, or
Yeah, kind of like a TikTok style, just like new products.
Yeah.
Did everyone hear the question? Has Product Hunt considered having more content and formats around demoing and highlighting startups that are like pitching?
Yeah, we've thought about that. We've never actually executed, like built like a destination for like demos in that sense. I guess the main reason why is this is actually a good example of like, there's a lot of ideas that we've had, but they never felt like it was going to be the 2Xer, let alone the 10Xer for the business, if that makes sense. Like, will this 10X engagement, will it 10X user growth, like will it 10X any like core metric? And I could be way wrong, but it just never felt like it was going to do that. And also video creation is really difficult. Most people are not good at video. It takes a lot of effort and work and skill sometimes to like create a really compelling like demo, video demo that is. So yeah, that's why we never pursued it, but not that it couldn't work. I think maybe if you wrapped everything around, this is like where products almost like, you have to like nail everything perfectly. Like in some cases you have to nail the community and the product and the distribution. Like, and if you don't nail one of those, it doesn't work in a way. It's like very fuzzy.
Kickstarter put a tremendous effort into that. They had a huge professional team, and like it's like because they couldn't solve it with technology, and like everyone sucks at making videos. All right, a couple more questions. All right, you were raising your hand for a while.
Yeah. I guess over the years you've been exposed to so many projects, even the ones that have the right idea and the right opportunity sometimes don't have quite the right timing. I'm wondering if any come to mind that were just too early, and whether you were able to wait for the right time or you felt like that was a mistake. I guess any kind of experience.
And are you referring to companies we've invested in or passed on or just generally?
Yeah, either way, whether you said, okay, maybe the right time will come for you, and whether you felt like that was a regret or...
Yeah. I'm sure there's definitely if we look back on our like companies we've spoken to, I'm sure there's some that we passed on wrongfully, or maybe good examples I can pull out. It's hard to think of one right now, but what I will say is like kind of going back to the AI stuff. So AI is both like overhyped and underhyped, and I think other people have kind of repeated similar things. Like there's a lot of energy and a lot of creation happening, and then there's also a lot of failure that's going to come due to a lack of defensibility or other concerns around like where does the value accrue to, in a sense. And I do think this is why we're a little bit cautious. Like we're speaking with people building AI tools for XYZ. We are speaking with companies there, but there is some hesitation to invest in those companies because of some of the reasons I mentioned earlier. Like, what is the moat? And they just started 2 weeks ago, and there are 3 other competitors that started a week after them. And so it's harder to have conviction in knowing like, is this the right category? And then within that, there's also a question of, is the technology mature enough to truly create that 10x kind of product improvement? Like, I don't know if this is a great example, but let's say the legal documentation side. Like, okay, this company has built something that maybe could improve workflows for lawyers, let's say, but is it sufficient enough? Is it like a 50% improvement when it really needs to be like a 10x improvement? It's hard to say right now. It's so early. Yeah.
Let's do one more question. All right, Nico.
Yeah, so I'm Nico, I'm part of the Thirdweb house, and I have 2 questions. The first one is, what were those 10xers in the case of Product Hunt? And the second one is, if you were building a product right now in Web3, what are the mental traps or the traps that you would avoid, and what would you do basically?
So I feel like Product Hunt was a series of, so we got traction really early on, which is kind of unusual, I think. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. It feels unusual for a lot of companies. Usually you like try a bunch of ideas and then you launch and like one of the 10 actually start to work out. We started getting traction quickly, and then I would say there weren't many like, I would say 10x jumps or leaps. It was a lot of like minor improvements, if that makes sense, to the core like flywheel. And what I mean by that is, so Product Hunt, the way it works is somebody posts a product, there's like a 24-hour kind of leaderboard, people upvote, people comment, and that flywheel, what's interesting about it is when makers and founders launch a Product Hunt, they share with their users. Some of those users are also makers and founders. They're like, oh, this is a cool place where I can get feedback and I can get users. Let me go post my product in the future. And so then that like cycle repeats. So it's basically like a self-fulfilling like flywheel of like user engagement and growth. And the ways that we like spun that flywheel faster were things like first even identifying makers, and then like leveraging the Twitter graph. So like when you follow somebody on Twitter, if you've authenticated like your account, we say, hey, Jason just launched his new product on Product Hunt, and we know that you know Jason because of your like Twitter following, basically. And so we send, in my case, like me, an email saying, hey, Jason just launched this thing. Those emails have high engagement. A lot of people come through, and they're very welcome because like I want to see what my friends are launching and people I follow. And so there's things like that we did to like basically look at the flywheel, look at all the steps of friction, and then also try to increase the number of people going through that flywheel, if that makes sense, in a way that's not spammy, but like truly authentic and value adding. So there's like a bunch of like different features that we kind of released to do those types of things. We tried some failed 10x kind of attempts. Like Product Hunt at one point we were trying to build Product Hunt for X, so Product Hunt for games, Product Hunt for books, Product Hunt for in the future maybe fashion, music and all those other categories, and that failed for a bunch of reasons. But if it worked, it would have been massive. It would have been a huge shift in kind of how the company and the community like grew.
Yeah.
And you had a question on the Web3 side, like, what mistakes would I avoid?
Mental traps or
traps. Well, this is actually interesting because it's like the thing that drew a lot of people into Web3, particularly the communities and the NFTs and things, were largely around financial speculation. Like turns out people like money.
Was that a trap?
Well, it's both a trap. It's like a bug and a feature is a thing. So it's a feature in that it attracted a lot of people to it, and there is a lot of like money that people made through it. However, for certain projects, let's say like DAOs, or like I put DAOs because it's kind of a fuzzy acronym or even definition today. The problem is if it's purely based on financial speculation, then you're relying on that community to be engaged as long as number goes up. and that's a problem. So in some ways it was great for initial adoption and spiking engagement, but then is it the right sustainable long-term strategy? I'm not sure. And so I don't know, like, what do you think?
I mean, well, the real expert is we have one of the founders of Wall Street Bets back there who can kind of speak to that. But I would just say, like we have very few use cases in crypto. We're trying to figure them out. That's why Thirdweb exists. Yeah, man. I think financial speculation is a thing that we love as people. Like, we gamble, we speculate, and now we have a whole new way to speculate. And that is one that was like the killer. Like, if music was the killer app for like the iPod or whatever, I think speculation was the killer app for crypto, and like we have new ways to raise money. I think we need more killer apps. But I just wanted to say we're now, I'm so excited for all of you because Ryan has given you the blueprint on how to build a successful startup and get super rich and like buy a big mansion in Miami. Oh my God, we're all so lucky.
Property taxes are high here, though.
Yeah,
Pro tip.
whatever though.
They got to make it up somehow. Yeah.
Thanks for coming. This was like super interesting. We got R Hoover on Twitter. You have a new newsletter that I noticed. Was it Signature? No, what is it
Signature
called?
Block. Yeah.
Tell everyone what's that.
So it's the most niche newsletter of all time. It's for
Yeah.
fund managers. So people who want to raise a fund or start a fund, or people who already manage a fund. I kind of like going super niche, actually. I'm like, I don't need tens of thousands of subscribers. Like, we have like almost 7,000 subscribers, but like if you think about it, those people like manage billions of dollars. And like that's cool. That's valuable. So
Niche to win. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. This is a lot of fun.
Yep.
Thanks for all coming. Great questions.
Good stuff.
Scene.
Insane.
Thanks for